Today we have another sibling TV battle. HISENSE U7N versus the HISENSE U8N. Up next.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me as we have another sibling TV battle with the HISENSE U7N versus the HISENSE U8N. They are both Uled quantum dot mini LEDs at 65 inches. Now I did a comparison last year of the U7K and the U8K, and many of you thought that was very close. Now they are both amazing TVs. A lot of features, tremendous value. The U7N being a better value than the U8N. But I love this matchup as it does lead to the question of should I get a larger U7N or a smaller U8N? Again, amazing TVs, tremendous value. The U8N is the top of the line HISENSE for many. There is the U9N and then the UX110, but for many of you, the U8N will be the flagship. Without further ado, let's see how these two match up. The HISENSE U7N versus the HISENSE U8N. Thank you so much for watching. All right, guys, let's do it. Let's check out the design of the U7N plastic base against the U8N's metal base. U8N is more high-end, better build quality. Check out the back of the panels very quickly. You have that textured backside of the U8N. They both sound excellent. We have a larger subwoofer on the U8N, more pronounced. And while the U7N has that plastic base, it does look metal. It does have a look to it. And you have a more simple back on the U7N. The U8N is also a good deal heavier. We move into our first demo here. Local dimming is the focus. Now we have the exposure a bit higher to try to show the differences between the two. The U8N has superior local dimming in comparison to the U7N. You're going to see some blooming here shortly there, but again, we have a higher exposure here to kind of show you that. You won't see it as aggressive, but I need to differentiate the two. U7N's local dimming is excellent. It can be erratic. U8N superior in terms of local dimming, though it can crush black at times. Now this comparison will also be a tale of presets. Whenever you're watching anyone compare TVs, it's very important to know what the TVs are in. If they're in something like Filmmaker, they'll look very much the same. Here you're seeing them in HDR Theater, which is my favorite HISENSE preset. However, this is where they look drastically different. Now, seeing the TVs separate, it's not as obvious that the U7N looks washed out. It needs to be next to something else. If I had the U8N next to an OLED, it may look washed out. You will see nearly every preset that is available, or at least the more popular presets where they do look very similar and very different. HDR Theater is a good mixture of accurate and has some pop. The U7N over brightens. However, watch the same demo when I switch them into the standard preset, which many of you watch. Now, the standard preset for the U7N is very aggressive. It looks very good. However, it's heavy-handed, more heavy-handed than the brighter U8N. And if you like a more vibrant image and you like your TVs very vibrant, the U7N is an excellent choice, as the standard and vivid presets are very strong. though I still prefer the U8N in the shots that are standard. You'll see standard a lot in this video. Now we're going to go through the presets in real time many times throughout this video. I leave these videos long simply because the TVs are the star of the show. It's not just the information. I'm not reading specs off a box for you. What I'm giving you or showing you is how these TVs look in the most dynamic content possible. Running through the presets in real time, showing you how it changes the image. And again, keep in mind, same year TVs, same brand. They are siblings and they are one tier apart, U8N, U7N. And very important to think about how you watch TV. How do you like your TVs? Moving into the HDR Vivid preset, which you're seeing here, they are very close. Now they're very blown out, but I'm not here to judge whether you like Vivid versus say Filmmaker. I want to show you everything that they can do. Very important. If I put them in Filmmaker and call it a day, it'd be a 5-minute video. If I put them in HDR Theater and call it a day, the U8N easily beats the U7N, and that's a short video. I'd rather show you the strengths of both. Moving again through the various presets. Things like IMAX and Sports look very similar, almost discernible from each other. So the main presets you'll see me in throughout this video are HDR Theater, HDR Standard, and HDR Filmmaker, and I'll label them where needed. Special shout out to the one and only Jennifer Gala and her second channel, HDR Super Channel. Most of the amazing work you see in this video is Jen's. Check the description below for links to her channel to see how your TV looks with her amazing content on it. Think about becoming a Patreon member. You can download all of these uncompressed with Dolby Vision and Atmos. Thank you, Jennifer. And why do I say dynamic? You saw some LG videos throughout the beginning of these videos. Jen's content can go anywhere from 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 10,000 nits. So you're seeing these TVs really being pushed. And you can say in even things like Filmmaker where they look similar, there are very distinct differences between the two. Now quickly showing you the differences in menus, U8N, U7N, and HDR Theater. Look at the black level on the U8N versus the grayish black level on the U7N. Now this is all about presets. It's how they approach it. Moving now into standard, same menus, the U7N is darker than the U8N, both in standard. But the standard can be aggressive, as you see here on the U7N. Though it's equally as bright, you lose a number of bubbles on the left-hand side. You almost lose that entire wave. Now, is that noticeable without them side by side? It is not. What I find interesting though is the local dimming in standard is excellent. You don't really have much crushing. You can see the difference in reflection handling as well. So while standard is very aggressive, you can probably turn down the advanced contrast aspect, maybe lessen it a bit. I didn't want to get into fooling with that. I wanted to keep them the way you would see them. But if you're someone that only likes Filmmaker mode, you'll see a lot of that as well. The U7N looks excellent, but HDR Theater, which is my favorite preset for HISENSEs in general, does not look great here in comparison to the U8N. Now, in my review of the U7N, it wasn't noticeable that the HDR Theater was that washed out, which is why comparisons are very interesting. You won't see me do comparisons until the end of the year, really. I won't do them as a TV launches for the first time. I believe each TV needs to be reviewed by itself first. That's just the way I do it. I'm not going to take a mini LED and throw it up against an OLED out of the box. I want to see how they do in a vacuum. That's when you get the real opinion on whether you're going to like it or not. If you go against a U8N versus a Quantum Dot OLED or something like that, of course, it's going to lose. But you might be happy with a larger U8N or U7N versus an OLED. These TVs have 100-inch sizes these days. You can find that with this lineup. And I'd much rather have a larger TV, like 100 inches, than a 77-inch OLED for the same price. Now you're checking out the Fire Dancers and Filmmaker. We're going to come back to them in standard in a minute or so. We're going to go through Filmmaker here for a few more seconds. Then we're going to go through the presets yet again and show you in real time how different they look. But if you were to picture the U8N move completely out of the way, this would look completely different. It's got nothing to do with the TVs exposing themselves, or they're not different technologies. I can get them both exposed very similarly in the same shot. We are using a wide-angle lens here. You're seeing what I'm seeing in real time. And it also shows the flexibility of image of both TVs. Now, many of you ask, are they calibrated? I'll tell you, Filmmaker gets you close enough. So whenever you see me in Filmmaker mode, you can imagine that's what it would look like in a calibrated, accurate preset. Now we're going to move back into standard for this area, and we're going to go back to our Fire Dancers. What's interesting about the local dimming on the U7N is you saw heavier blooming on the overexposed image earlier on the LG Ink demo with the color. The exposure is the same, the room is a bit darker. Local dimming should suffer here. It's not that the local dimming isn't very good, it can just be erratic at times, meaning the blooming shows up at times where you wouldn't expect it, and other times it's not there. I could run that same demo and maybe not see it. So it's not a level of local dimming not being effective, just not being quite as elegant as the U8N's local dimming, which runs much smoother. Now again, the U8N at times may lose shadow detail, it may crush them slightly. I'll take that over blooming any day. Now the standard preset, as we've said, can be more aggressive on the U7N, not in terms of crushing blacks, but you will lose detail. It will clip at times, as you're seeing here. Now, all the colors are the same. The TVs are set exactly the same. The color temperatures can still look different from time to time. But quickly going back to HDR Theater, look how different and washed out the U7N will look in comparison to the U8N. Again, going through the presets in real time, showing you how different they can look. Now, as I mentioned, HDR Theater is my favorite preset on all of the Hisenses I have ever seen, including the UX from last year. However, separate from each other, they look great. Together, definitely the edge goes to the U8N. The U7N will look washed out. What's interesting is the U8N itself in even standard can look washed out compared to the Panasonic W95A behind me. You'll see that comparison next. So we talk about peak brightness and HDR impact. The U8N wins in this regard, but brightness needs to be useful brightness. If contrast ratio suffers, it means very little to have a very bright TV. Meaning, in my opinion, if you wanted your TV to be very bright, increase the brightness if it washes it out. That's why we don't do that, is the brightness has to be useful and something you see in specular highlights, not just the overall image being brighter in lieu of contrast ratio. To speak about value, Hisense is one of the best in the industry, tied with TCL for bang for the buck. High-end specs at a great value, as well as a ton of sizes of each model, ranging from very small to very large. I don't put the prices in these videos as they do get watched a year or two later, and the prices are nowhere near accurate. But keep in mind that usually a U8N at 65 inches costs the same as a U7N at 75 inches. Rule of thumb, you can get a much larger U7N for the same price as a smaller U8N. Think about that as you watch the video. Now you'll see here, even being a little overexposed, you can also see more detail on the U8N and the blooming still under control on the U7N. Now, arguably, this is a harder demo. It's much brighter than that LG demo you saw earlier. Remember, Jen's content, 2,000 nits, 4,000 nits. HDR Filmmaker, they look very similar. I still give the depth and the color edge to the U8N. But 15 minutes in, guys, what do you think? What are your thoughts of these two? It's amazing watching Hisense get into or being closer to the big three or the big four now that Panasonic is back. But in terms of value, you'll see people buying a 100-inch U8K or U8N or these larger TVs, 85 inches, for the price of a 55-inch QD OLED or OLED from LG or Samsung or even Sony. No matter how good that image is, if you need a larger size, those TVs can't grow. Or you'll have from the other companies like Samsung, Sony, and LG, their equal priced models will have maybe no local dimming at all. Or there'll be LEDs versus a mini LED. Here you have quantum dot ULED mini LED, ton of zones, very bright, excellent contrast ratio. As we move through the presets again in this video. Showing you more skin tone, though she's wearing makeup, you can see the detail change on the U8N versus the U7N. But in my opinion, the U8N and the U7N are farther apart than last year's U8K and U7K, which is really saying something because the U7N this year is better than last year's U7K. But I also feel the U8N is a good deal better than last year's U8K. It's just brighter, it just has more pop, and it's more three-dimensional. The local dimming is also better. Last year's U8K, excellent, also had erratic local dimming, meaning it would fluctuate here and there. Much more even-keeled this time around. The processing is much better. Now, quickly touching on processing, upscaling, and upconversion of lower bitrate content, still a struggle for Hisense. That is, again, something you're going to have to really pay for with the other manufacturers. It's much better than it was years ago. It gets better every year, but I would still say that that's someplace where they still lag slightly behind the more pronounced manufacturers, where you're paying for, you're paying a premium for that processing. However, here we're doing some pause images so you can really see what the presets are doing. That processing upconversion, you gotta really say how much sub 1080p content do you watch. 1080p looks great, 4K looks great. But if you're watching old films, I guess, maybe that's not the brand for you. They still look fine, especially when not compared to everything else. You may need to switch the presets to compensate, but it's still something that they have to improve on. Now, what's interesting in that last shot prior to this fire shot, I actually liked the way the U7N looked better in that specific shot. But again, it's the content you watch, the type of films, movies, and shows you stream. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it into a punishing local dimming situation here. And you're going to see in HDR theater where the local dimming does fall apart. Now, what's interesting is you take the U8N out, it's not as drastic a difference, but you can see where it's struggling, and this is very tough. It's black and white, there's rain in the image. It's a lot for the local dimming to do. Now, in my review, I had that same shot, but it was in standard. What I love here is you're seeing this space shot. You're not crushing the details. The stars do have that sparkle to them. Now, in terms of blooming, you're watching me bring these menus up. You're not seeing the difference, or the camera's not changing exposure. This is what it looks like in the room this time of day. You can still see the window on the left of the U8N. So we're not in a completely dark room. But in these space shots, you can see the local dimming doing very well on the U7N and U8N. They look nearly identical in this shot. Jen's content is off the charts, as well as the HDR Super channel. That's also Jen's channel. What do you guys think looking at the comparison between these two? For me, again, if you're looking at a TV that's very vibrant and you're thinking about getting a 75 or an 85 inch over the 65 inch U8N, go for the U7N. I would stay away from that HDR theater preset in these very bright shots, or if the TV looks washed out to you, into that preset, jump over to standard or even IMAX. But keep in mind the standard's a little aggressive. Maybe take the standard down a notch with some of their processing, and you may appreciate that more. Now, standard being one of the most popular presets, as it does ship in that preset. Now, also, I didn't mention this earlier, we're going through the different presets. Energy Saver actually looks very good on the U7N. It looks like a filmmaker mode, but it gets very dark on the U8N as we were going through the presets. Now, for those of you that haven't bought into Hisense yet, let me know in the comments what your opinion is of the brand. They've come a very long way and they've been around for a very long time. But are they closer to breaking into the big three or now big four? We're talking about LG, Sony, Samsung, and now Panasonic's back in the US. You're going to see the Panasonic W95A mini LED go against the U8N, not the U7N, the U8N. Spec-wise, it probably compares more to the U7N, but price-wise, it compares more to the U8N. Here, the local dimming deeper on the U8N, but still very good on the U7N. Here, you're not really seeing blooming around the images, a little bit brighter around the corners, but still very good. And though they are the same color preset, they've all been warmed up, the U8N does have a cooler look to it, moving into gaming. We're going to stay with console gaming here, showing you the different images. The U8N, much better looking game mode. We're staying in game standard HDR, though there are different presets. FPS standard is the best looking. Much deeper here. They are set exactly the same. Game modes for Hisense, performance is the strength and not image quality. They're not the clearest game mode. So for here, the U8N is definitely a must buy if you want the best looking game mode versus the U7N. Amazing performance, but definitely better image quality, deeper, more colorful image on the U8N. That finishes it up for gaming. Now, in closing, the U8N and U7N are very easy to recommend. Again, excellent picture quality, crazy local dimming, crazy specs for not a lot of money. However, the U8N is the clear winner in nearly every single shot and every single aspect, from build quality to image quality to processing. Deeper colors, it's brighter, but doesn't always look brighter because the local dimming is superior. That said, the value proposition on the U7N is ridiculous. Amazing TV. Also, if you want a larger TV, grab a larger U7N over the U8N. The differences I'm showing you here won't be evident. If you have a U7N, you have an amazing TV. I'm Brian. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful evening. Love you guys. Take care.
It's better to burn out than to fade away. I've been